All right. Rock climbing, caving, the Maya, the Olmec, the people of the ancient world of limestone. That's what we're talking about this week, and how making discoveries based off of understanding the landscape can take you into a flow state. This is the story told by Arcelia Garcia, a rock climbing badass archaeologist who I happened to have spent time with on an expedition about a year ago, looking into the heart of a mountain for the story of the Maya. Let's go, Arcelia.
That moment of near disaster.
And with difficulty kept my
Understanding
course.
of chimpanzees in the wild.
It was for us the pleasure of discovering.
Arcelia. Oh my
Hi.
gosh. It's so good to see you. Like you were saying earlier, it's been a little bit. It's been exactly 1 year since we were canoeing across that magical lake together in Chiapas. Wow.
Yeah, that's right. It was exactly on February 26th. We were filming the Lake Metzaboc. It's
Oh my
amazing.
gosh. Yeah, you know how your phone does that thing where it sends up the photo from a year ago? I actually pulled it up because it just came up this morning and I was like, "Oh, what? The timing on this." Let's see this photo. This was exactly 1 year ago. Actually, this was the
Yeah,
day before 1 year ago.
yeah.
When we
This was
had
it.
just dropped into a tiny hole on the top of a
Mm-hmm.
magical mountain
Mm-hmm.
into what you described. How did you describe it? Like the underworld of the Maya? What do they call that?
It's the entrance to the underworld of the Maya in that cave. That cave in the Red Mountain in Chacactun.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of funny to think a year ago we were descending into the underworld, what they describe as Shibala, right? Or the
Shilbaba.
Shibaba. How do you say it again? Shibaba.
Shilbaba.
What
Shilbaba.
is what does that translate to specifically?
It's uh, it is the underworld, but in late Maya. So yeah, that's kind of like the general term that we refer to for the underworld for the Maya.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, we're gonna get into this in a minute, all this because I really wanna tap your mind as an archaeologist into what you're known for, which is correct me if I'm wrong, but it's as what I've known you for is as a landscape archaeologist, someone who tries to interpret our relationship to our environments, through time. And but the other part of this is that you're just a badass rock climber. You know, like, that you spent a lot of time on your own just seeking out extreme vertical experiences. So, the combination of those two worlds led to you and I meeting a year ago and making one of the Lost Cities episodes. Just wanted to know, did you get a chance to see the Lost Cities episode that we made?
I haven't yet. I have seen the videos. I've seen the promo videos on YouTube, but I haven't seen it because it hasn't aired in Latin America yet. It hasn't aired in Mexico. So I can't wait. I have friends and family who have traveled to the States or who are from the States that have commented on it. And, I'm thinking I'm just going to travel to the States, rent an Airbnb just to watch the show because I can't wait.
Just come stay in my non-guest room This is like,
Yeah.
stay in the studio. We can watch it together. But that first of all, I'm sorry that it hasn't come out yet. I know it's coming out real soon in Latin America. I just don't know, what the dates are on that. But what what I've taken away from the last year since being there is that experience in Chiapas, I don't know, it fundamentally changed, I think, my understanding of how I see my landscape because of the fact that we were
Really?
still, we were with the living descendants of the Maya describing their world,
Yeah.
to us. They were describing their world to us. Uh, I mean, some of the memories, like when we were canoeing across that lake,
Mhm.
I don't know. Maybe you can tell the audience here a little bit who might not have seen the episode what your experience was like with us in making that, and the relationship to the Lakan and Maya.
Yeah, especially that canoeing in the lake was so special to me because there are several, let's say, watery places that were like the origins of civilization in Mesoamerica. I mean, I'm studying one right now here in Mexico City. Mexico City, as many of you might know, used to be a lake, so it was a watery place full of rivers and lakes. But now Mexico City is one of the largest cities in the world. So we have, urbanization all over. And in the place where the first villages of Mexico City existed, right now you have houses and buildings and one of the biggest avenues. And in Metzaboc is totally the opposite. This is one of the earliest settlements and villages. But you go there and it's as if you're traveling back in time, traveling back 2,000 years ago, and the landscape is as it was. And so to see the lake, the mountain, knowing that there's a cave on top of the mountain, all of the elements that were sacred for the ancient ones are still there, and we can still experience them in their, as they were. Here in Mexico City, I have to imagine them. There, you can just live them and experience them. So I think that for me was one of the most special moments in filming the episode.
Yeah, for me too. I mean, I've filmed all over the world, right? And a lot of times we're filming around, ruins that have been left in the sands of time, and yet all that remains are the echoes that are being sort of reverberated off those ruins. But here we had the living descendants describing
Yeah.
their relationship to the world. And then, there was this moment when we were going across the lake. We're paddling across the lake, and somebody had looked down, and there was all these weird roots sort of growing up out of the lake, and
Hmm.
they said, "Yeah, this is also in the waters considered the primordial underworld where the dead go after we pass, and where the spirits come from before we're born." And I just remember canoeing off, across this watery world, and just feeling like I was, I don't know, I had chills going up my back because I was looking down
Yeah.
into the spirit world. And is this
Yeah.
for you, a person who's specialized in areas around Chiapas, but not just the Maya, how do you describe the Zoku? I don't know how you pronounce the
Zoque,
people that live Zoque and
the Zoque.
the Zoque and the Aztecs and the Mexicas and all the different communities in that region. Are there consistencies across this part of the world where the relationship to caves, mountains, and water have just been consistent through time, through civilizations that are somehow, I don't know, some kind of instinctual knowledge that was born out of the jungle?
Yes, I mean there are consistency in terms that they are sacred places and they are places where the celestial realm and the terrestrial realm coexist. So that's why they're so special now. Um, in the case of watery places and what you mentioned, the primordial place of origin, the Matwil in for the Maya, it tends to be a watery place, which makes sense, of course, because the first villages were around water, which is a place to adapt quickly, to get resources from the lakes, and agriculture is easier. They adapt a little bit to the environment rather than getting the environment to adapt to the people. So yeah, place of origins tend to be watery places, and both caves and mountains have been sacred throughout Mesoamerica since the early pre-classic throughout the post-classic with the Mexica, which were the later civilizations of Mesoamerica. but for the Maya, they had so many caves that they tend to have a more complexity of symbolism and legends and myths and traditions. To this day, they continue to be sacred for the people who live there.
Okay, so entering into a cave. We went into a cave. We literally rappelled down
Yeah.
into the heart of a cave. And when I first even sort of caught the idea that there was a cave in this area, it was through ancient glyphs that described a breathing mountain.
Mhm.
And when we went up to this top of this mountain, right at the very top, there was that moment, when um one of our Lakandan collaborators
I think it
leaned
was
down.
Elias. I
Yeah,
think
was
his
it?
name was Elias. Yeah.
What happened? Remind me. I mean, I just want to hear your
Yeah,
version of
yeah.
it because for me it was like,
No.
what is happening? But you spend so much time in this
No,
world, so
we were walking to the mountain, and there was kind of like a breathing hole, like a hole. And he says, "Look, it's breathing. It's the breath of the mountain." Yeah,
oh
and it
yeah,
really
and he leaned
was. It really
down.
was.
He literally leaned
Yeah,
down, and the wind from inside the belly of the mountain breathed
yeah,
through that little teeny hole, and it pushed his hair back. And I mean,
yes,
talk about a magical moment, right?
yeah, yeah.
But the whole hike up to the top of that mountain, you were describing, certain translations from the words that Elias was using, where,
Hmm.
even looking at the mountain as a inanimate object didn't seem right anymore. I think we actually have some
Hmm.
of the translations from Elias, or not translations, but I found a video on my phone of him speaking and saying some words. But just hearing the ancient
Okay.
words of the Maya, we can listen to that for a second, but do you um okay, so this goes back to my friends that are Maya linguists. They say that when we use certain
Hmm.
words or we use certain descriptions, they actually become the lenses upon which we see the world. And as a person who's trying to
Hmm.
understand how we see the world through our landscape, I just wanted to know what like how you use language. But first, let's hear Elias. Soy un pin,
Soy in war.
soy un war.
Soy in war. Guayen yo gash.
Really?
La montaña.
Wayen,
Guayen yo gash.
soy un
Hmm.
war, wayen o ash.
Yo gash.
Uno más. Soy
Soy in war. Guayen yo gash.
the mountain.
La montaña.
What is he saying there?
I I don't know. I do not. I'm not a linguist. It was actually Dr. Joel,
Yeah.
who does understand both the glyphs and the Maya, and he mentioned that there's not that there is some similarity between the ancient Maya and the one that they are using, that the modern day Maya were using. So it's through him that we discussed that Chakakdun means red cave in the mountain, and Madwil means primordial place of origin. It was through him, but I remember a little anecdote that as we were canoeing back to the village, there was a canoe that was kind of like just drifting around. And Elias said in Spanish, because he also spoke Spanish, so he was our translator. He said, "Oh, the canoe escaped." He said it in Spanish, but escape is kind of like not a word that we use for a thing. Is a person escapes, but he said it in a way that got me like really confused. Like, what do you mean? Who escaped? It's like the canoe escaped, but kind of like giving it a will or a life, or like saying in Spanish that the canoe decided to escape. And then I remember, yes, like this is it's animism, is where everything around them has a certain energy or a certain power, a certain will. It's everything around us is alive, and it was like that for the ancient one, and it continues to be for the people, the modern day Maya.
Well, that canoe might have been me. So, I definitely was wandering around, not knowing. They left me alone
Yeah,
with the
yeah,
canoe
yeah.
for a bit, and then the canoe escaped, but I was captive to the escaping. You know, well, what a magical place, right?
Yeah,
And you brought me up to this. I think this is probably the first episode in this latest season of Lost Cities, but you brought
yeah.
me up to the top of this mountain, and then we roped up and we descended into this mountain in
Mhm.
a very sharp limestoney kind of, it felt like we were going into a
Yeah,
sea of razor blades,
yeah, I
and then but
remember.
we entered into what you described as the home of the gods. uh
Hmm.
and like, your career has taken you from the depths of the earth to the tops of the mountains, and I just really wanted it, but through a perspective of trying to understand humanity's relationship to these places, right? Specifically in the regions that you've been in, but they seem kind of universal, these relationships.
Hmm.
Are there, like, what is happening to us? Why do we come to caves? Why do we find caves as being a place where we emerge from? Or what is, the most ancient rock art in the world is found in caves. What is it about our relationship to the earth that you see and have taken away from your years of research, that you were telling me
Well,
about when we were entering that cave?
mhm. Well, I think that we see a lot of metaphors for life in the caves. So, for example, I have explored some caves in the Maya area where you have to go like through kind of like a very narrow place that you have to, get on your belly and kind of like come out. And so for the Maya, that was like a rebirth, like a recreation, like a metaphor of a rebirth. So that is one of the metaphors that we see in the mountains. Also, well, when we die, we are buried inside Earth. So that was another metaphor that the Mayas used. If you, I don't know if, do you remember the tomb that you visited, the tomb, the Pacal tomb? There was
Oh
this
yeah.
this yeah, there was this big carving. It's a fantastic carving of Pacal, and he's descending to a cave because after when he died, he was kind of like going down as a young Pacal into the mouth of the cave and going back down to earth. So I think humans see these metaphors in inside caves of what our experience, what our kind of like basic experiences in life are
Hmm.
going to be. And that's why human beings come and return to caves to kind of like go back to the essence of what makes us human.
The essence of
Yeah.
what makes us human. Okay, so we just nailed it. Okay, this is the whole point of this podcast, is to try to figure out what is the essence of our experience. Um and it's not just caves, but also mountains, that you
Yeah.
study, and you find that there's a version of us that lives at the edge, on cliffs, on mountaintops. I don't want to just jump away from caves just yet, but I just want to get to the point that, like,
Hmm.
is it, when you say what is at the essence of what makes us human, is it is the wonder and the awe that I feel, and I'm sure you feel being a climber,
Yeah.
when we're around these kind of natural phenomena that shapes who we are? Or is it the other way around? Like, I don't know. Like, what is your thought there? Like, how does nature tie
I
into the
think
essence of our humanity?
I think a lot about, yes, it's connection to life, is kind of like sensing that that it's going to be a short time that we are in the world. So that, well, and also kind of like the connection. You just reminded me of one time that I was for sport, I was about to do a big wall climbing, and before doing a big wall climbing, we had to sleep on inside a cave, and then the next day climb the mountain. And so, there were jitters, like pre-jitters to doing a big wall climbing. This was in Peru, in the Cordillera Blanca. And so we were like completely isolated from civilization, sleeping in a cave. And the funny thing is that there was a modern day drawing made by a climber. And so a climber did kind of like their own art, like rock art on the wall, kind of like drawing a climber. And I said, we're doing the same things that our ancestors were doing thousands of years ago. Like we're
Wow.
trying to connect, and we are trying to kind of like draw our connection to the world. So in the past, maybe they were doing this prior to doing a hunting, and today we as climbers are doing kind of like this rock art before our climb. So that was kind of funny, but it does reminded me of what we have been doing for thousands of years, which is realizing that our time on earth is short, and when we are in doing something that connects us to nature, and something that maybe puts us in the hands of nature, so to speak, we tend to sense the connection a bit deeper.
Mm.
And in the case of whoever climbed that wall before us, decided to make that connection permanent through an art form in the cave.
I mean, well,
It
art is our
it was funny.
imagination, right? Like art is the
Yeah,
physical expression of our imagination. So maybe what you're saying is that the feelings that we have when we're in those moments of immersion in the epicness of nature is inspiring to the point of overflowing imagination, right?
yeah.
And that's so cool that you were basically in the footsteps of the ancients on your moment before you climb. But going back to what you were saying earlier with Pakal and his tomb. So just so everybody knows, Pakal is one of the probably most iconic Maya leaders,
Yeah,
most specifically of the city of Palenque. Um, and he built much of Palenque, but in his tomb, which is oh my
yeah.
gosh, I had this like unbelievable experience. I don't It hasn't been open for a long time, right?
I wanted
I'm
to ask you that. How did it feel to go down that tomb? I mean, we archaeologists haven't, not all of us, or very few are able to go down that tomb. What was that
It
like?
was what I mean, it was such a first of all, it's such an honor to be able to go down into a place that was such a landmark archaeological discovery, right? The sort of the story of how they found the tomb as they found this sort of false door, and then they started pulling away and excavating out these stairs that went all the way down into the heart of the pyramid in this kind of zigzaggy thing. It To me, the first of all, the feeling is pretty eerie because it's got this there's no light, except there's this one channel, this kind of like spirit channel. There's a tube that goes all the way down into the tomb, that runs up and is supposed to just be like this doorway for the spirit. And you're going past this thing, right? And then you go down into these very slippery, kind of wet, moist limestone stairs because the pyramid is seeping, all the time. And you get into the bottom chamber, and there's this big triangle pyramid, sort of doorway. It's like a pyramid, or a sorry, not pyramid. It's a triangle doorway, and it's just like, oh, all the geometries and the symbolism, and then you walk through this door, and then boom, it what's hard to see in the cameras is that it looks like a crystal palace in there because all all the seeping of of the pyramid around you has created these sort of stalactites and stalagmites. And and I heard that there was a river that runs underneath that tomb specifically, this aqueduct that goes back to the Tuliha River and then all the way up to Metzibach. But uh, when you're inside the tomb of Pakal and you look down in that mural and you see the tree of life, the Seba tree inscribed on the top of this thing, and you're surrounded by all these symbols of being within a cave itself, within the earth, I can't help but feel like it was mimicking what I saw at the Red Mountain. Because when we got into the Red Mountain, and you actually when spoiler alert, but what you see when we do our scans of the Red Mountain is that the whole mountain is shaped like a pyramid. Uh, but when you and I went down into the heart of that, there was this moment where you said, "Do you remember what you said to me?" You said, "Look for the
Mm,
stalactites." Because the
yes, look for the
stalactites are where all the
stalactites.
symbols are, right? That, like, why? So, but then we went to the stalactite, and while it almost seems like too good to be true, uh, right there above the base of the stalactite was this ancient offering. I felt like I was in the natural version of what I had seen at Palenque's tomb. The same thing, just
Wow.
in the real deal. I don't know
Wow. Yeah.
what is it like for you to find, and why are these offerings below these stalactites in the heart of the mountain?
Well, for the ancient Maya, it wasn't random. They didn't choose like random caves. They all had a symbolism. And in the case of the stalactites, they use pottery to place them beneath the stalactite for the dripping water, to collect the dripping water, and the dripping water was later used for rituals. And so they collected them. That's why they placed them there. But you know, we the offering was not near the entrance of the cave. I mean,
No, no.
you have to
Yeah.
go down. I mean, can you imagine? Can you imagine 2000, around 2000 years ago, using ropes made of natural fiber to get down with torches and place that offering just below the stalactite because that was a sacred space for them. So nothing was random for them. Everything was part of how they view the world in a way that there was no difference between the myths and the natural world, or the culture and the natural world. It was all one thing. So it is amazing to think about. That's what I was thinking about, just how they managed to go down, because that was the place that was special.
I go back to what you just said about the myths and the natural world are the same thing. I mean, that's certainly what I felt when I was with you and with the entire community of the living current present day Maya, is that there was a relationship to belief and nature and and the human consciousness that we're all just one. It wasn't like they were separated into different categories, but we were all just in this one big thing. Is that what you're trying to describe when you think about in your mind this person 2000 years ago walking down into the heart of a cave and putting an offering to collect the sacred
Yes,
waters of a dripping
yes,
mountain?
yes, and there's also a temple on top of the mountain. So you have a mountain, you have a cave, and a temple. So we modern day we tend to separate, right? Like the temple is man-made, the cave is natural, and we kind of like have these categories, but not for them, not for the ancient Maya. For the ancient Maya, this was a palace for the gods. This was a place for the gods. So the temple, the cave, the offering, the myths, ourselves as human beings, we were all once one thing.
But not only a
And
temple, it
and
was
yeah,
like the temple, right? Because what I read in the tomb, Pakal, was this description of a mythical origin city, Matweel. And, Steve Houston and Dave actually was, no, it was Dave Stewart I was with recently, and he said that his earliest dis- decipherings were of that specific symbol and that it's the origin city of Palenque, but the description of Matweel, led us to that place with that mountain being right at the heart of it, right? And the relationship of that mountain to the city and the lake and everything seemed to have this alignment to specific dates and cosmic movements of the sun and things like this. But it's the very beginning. It's the very beginning. So how did like did everything spring from that place? Is that the core belief sort of foundation that led to all the different versions of Maya belief systems that you see in the astrology and the observatories and everything like that at Palenque? I mean, is that what we're seeing? The natural world reflected in this imagination that then becomes a civilization?
Well, what we understand now about the history in Mesoamerica is that there were several watery places that tend to be origin of civilization. So, for example, we used to think that the Olmec was the mother of all cultures, or the mother of all civilizations, and from the Olmec, it continued and developed into the different variety of civilizations in Mesoamerica. But now we understand that there were several places of origin, not just one. They tend to be watery, but there were several places. So this is from the pre-classic, and in the pre-classic, we have Tatilco here near the Lake of Texcoco in Mexico City, Tlacopaya, and also in the center of Mexico City, and in the Gulf we have Tres Zapotes. So there are several, and because the water is so important for these early societies, they tend to have this sacred aspect to them, and it continues on, and it starts continuing on into myth. So there is we don't have evidence of one place of origins for all civilization, but several places where
Right.
society began and developed.
So we emerge from these watery worlds, right? And then just like your journey, I'm making a poetic assumption here, sort of leap here, but I sort of see your career as being like, when you are from the depths of the earth and the hearts of caves all the way to the tops of mountains, and yet all through that journey, uh, you see our human relationship to environment. So we leave these watery worlds, and then in some of the places you explore, um, oh, actually, yeah, in some of the places you explore, maybe we can pull up a picture of her climbing somewhere, one of these cliffs. It is, uh, it is not near water. It does not seem objectively uh, convenient to live in a place like this. Obviously, this is just a climbing photo where where is this? Is this,
Yeah. Mexico
do you
City.
recognize? Oh, this is Mexico City?
This is
Wow.
Mexico City. Yes. Yes.
Really? I had no idea that. Wow. So
Yeah. In the
was Mexico
background, there's
City
the city.
was Mexico City once a lot like Metzebach? A
Oh
watery world
yes.
with
Oh yes.
mountainous.
Near the Lake of Texcoco, it certainly was. Now the city is built on top of the lake, but this is a mountain, also a mountain type. It's called Coconetla. And later, when the Spaniards started writing about the myths and the history of the ancient Mexica, who lived there who were living in Mexico City when the Spaniards arrived. So when the Spaniards started writing about their history and their myths, part of it was that this place was also an important place where rituals happened, where the Mexica used to make rituals to the god of water, to Tlaloc. So even
This
though we
cliff.
don't have a lake nearby, yeah, this cliff, the Cerro La Coconetla. So even
So do you
though we
find
don't have
offerings all over?
I have found offerings in mountains, not particularly here in Coconetla, but in the mountains that surround the basin of Mexico, in Nevado de Toluca, Iztaccíhuatl, and those volcanoes. So there is a relationship between mountain and water, because for the Mexica, they associated the mountain with the god of rain, Tlaloc, and Tlaloque, its helpers. They believed that the mountain was hollow, and inside the mountain was water and all of the things that sustain life and make life abundant. So there is a correlation between the mountains and the water, and in particular in this place in La Coconetla. That's why I chose this. That's why I like this picture.
As a boy, I used to spend a lot of time backpacking in the mountains in the Eastern Sierras. I grew up in the Bay Area partly, and the Eastern Sierras were just this magnet for me. And I remember there always being these afternoon thunderstorms that just sort of hovered
Yeah.
over the peaks of the mountains. Is that
Yeah.
something similar that you see
Yes.
here?
Yes, that was one of the observations. One of the observations was that the clouds gathered on top of the mountains, on top of the volcano, and then they spread throughout the land. So the belief was that the water came from inside the mountain, and then
Wow.
this water, this abundance spread throughout the rest of the Valley of Mexico.
So water is life, and for whatever reason, the clouds aggregate at the mountains. Today, climate science and things like this can help explain, and then meteorology can show you that that the wind patterns that move these sort of rising air drifts can create clouds and that. But for our human belief, that goes back to
Yeah.
the early Mexica and just so again, I think I get so confused all the time. But Mexica is the main set that also includes things like the Aztecs and others within it as subsets, right? Is that right? Am I
Well,
thinking about this correctly?
The Mexica is actually the Aztecs. So we use
Exactly.
Mexica because Mexica is how they call themselves.
Mhm.
Aztec is a term used later by an American archaeologist, but they call themselves Mexica. So that's why I call
Mexicas.
them Mexica.
Okay, so
Mexicas.
the
And the Mexicas
Mexicas.
they were living, they were this great power that was in the city of Tenochtitlan, and it was part of this great alliance that spread through the center of Mexico. And when the Spaniards arrived and they saw this amazing city built on top of the lake, it was the city of the Mexica. It was
So the
Tenochtitlan, which is now Mexico City.
so the original indigenous name for who what later in the Western world were known as the Aztecs were the Mexica, and the
Correct.
Mexica, lived in this landscape that was watery and had mountains and these vertical worlds, um, and their relationship to it was how they saw the life force emerging, water
Mm-hmm.
and all those things and yet I also see in some of your work that you spend a lot of time looking at communities that actually lived on the side of those cliffs, right? That actually lived, maybe not specifically around Mexico City, but down closer in Chiapas and other areas like that. And I just like it's not convenient to set your house up on the side of a cliff if you're
Yeah.
trying to get access to regular day water, right? So what what's going on there?
Okay. Well, that is one of the great questions of archaeology that we need to answer. But so there is this place. There's this canyon. It's called Cañón Río La Venta. I have uh, maybe a book here. Here it is, Cañón Río La Venta.
Did you write
And
that book?
this canyon, yeah. Can you hear that?
You wrote
Can you
that
see
book?
that? No, I didn't
Ah,
write that book, but this was the book that got me into landscape archaeology. I was a climber for the sake of the sport, and then I was asked if I wanted to participate in a project to know a little bit more about Cañón Río La Venta. Cañón Río La Venta is in Chiapas. The people who live there are not the Maya, but the Zoque is another civilization that was parallel to the Maya, but they weren't exactly the Maya. And here there is this big cliff that runs 86 kilometers throughout the jungle. And on the cliffs, there were paintings. And next to the paintings, there were caves. And some of the caves, there were burials, there were offerings, and there were even places to live, even dwellings. So we still haven't answered fully, determinedly why they were living there. But you can sense that there was something going on that's related to the history and related to the history of the Zoque with another group that's called the Chiapaneca, because when the Spaniards arrived, the Chiapaneca had were kind of like the overlords of the Zoque. So the Zoque in the post-classic were living on cliffs, on caves and cliffs. And what is interesting, and this is the sort of thing that in landscape archaeology you pay attention to, is that the caves where they were living, they were caves that you couldn't see from the ground up. But from the cave, you could see the river. So from below, you couldn't see the cave. You had to you had to kind of like find your way to the cave. So that is a beautiful, fantastic place that we should go. We should go there.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, 100% we should go there. I'll dust off my climbing rack and you lead, I'll
Yeah.
fall. But
Oh
the
yeah, happy.
I mean the whole idea of it being a large, I mean, what you're describing sounds like a strategic, almost defensive positioning to live up on caves. Um, but to find that place as an archaeologist, that a hidden place on the side of a cliff, that you're just looking for, hoping that there's going to be something there. Is there a specific memory that you have of making a discovery on that cliffside?
Yeah.
That's just gotta feel you're just going into the nothing, right? And you're hoping you're gonna stumble across one of these
Yes.
dwellings.
So the first people who started making discoveries here in Cañón Río La Venta were cave explorers who were doing maps of caves. They found offerings and so they were the ones who wrote this book. And so they called me because there was one cave you needed to climb, and you needed to climb like a solid 10 plus, 5-10 plus for climbers out there. That's kind of like intermediate climbing. In
Pretty
the
hard. That's
past,
pretty
probably
hard. 10 plus. That's like that's like advanced, right? If you're gonna lead climb a 5, 10, you gotta make me feel better about myself and not call it intermediate.
Okay.
That's
Well,
very advanced, right?
you're a
Yeah.
solid climber. I mean, if
Solid
and
climber. Yeah.
solid. So if you're wondering how the ancient Zoque managed to get there, were probably specifically for this cave, they walked through a ledge, and now the ledge fell down, and so the ledge is no longer there. So we have to climb. We have to set up a 5-10 route and in the limestone overhang and arrive to this cave where there was a stalactite, and there was below the stalactite there was an offering. Like I said, it's not random. So there was an offering below there, and in landscape archaeology, it's a methodology where you're trying to get kind of like the information that can tell us a little bit about how the ancient people saw and constructed the world around them. And so I got kind of like behind the offering, and I could see the stalactite, I could see the offering, and in front there was a cave that you couldn't see from below. You could only see that cave from this place of the offering, right in front. So imagine a cliff. So on the opposite side of the wall, you could see another cave.
Wow,
And
wow.
I
So you're
said,
in a
this
gorge.
cave
So
is
the
special.
the river is cutting through this. You're here. You're looking
Exactly.
out, and there's a stalactite, an offering, and it aligns with another cave. Did you go to the
It
other cave?
aligned it aligned with another cave. Of course I went to the other cave. That's the first thing I did. I came down and I went to the other cave. And in fact, it was an archaeological cave. It was a cave. There was pottery there. There was even food there, like little bits of corn. There was kind of like a terrace, a man-made terrace. There were walls, and it was an archaeological cave that hadn't been written about, hadn't been registered until then. And the reason I saw that cave is because I could place myself behind the offering and the stalactite, and it was facing this cave right in front, and you couldn't see the cave from below. So this is how landscape archaeologists try to see everything, not just the ground where you might
Hmm.
find pottery, but what is around. Is there a cave? Is there a mountain? Is there water? Is there some alignment to a particular moment in time? So all of these things matter. And through finding this is that we kind of can get in a small window into the imagination of the ancient Zoque, of the ancient Mayas, and what symbolism and what symbolism they gave to everything that was around them. That
So
was that was amazing. That was
you
a
actually had
great
to
place.
put you actually had to put yourself physically in the footsteps of the person uh
Yeah,
to see what they were seeing, to interpret the reason why they placed something where they placed it as a clue to where you should look next. I mean I
exactly.
mean that's unbelievable. But being there, standing there and seeing this thing and the symbolism that you just described, I mean, do you feel something when you're there? Like, I know this is not something we're supposed to you're supposed to be very objective all the time, nothing subjective.
Yeah.
But as a person who's standing in a sacred place and in the presence of the imagination of somebody from 5,000 years, or not 500 years ago or so, how long ago was this? It was about 500, 600 years ago. Is that the
Post-classic, yeah. So we are talking 700, between 500 and 700 years ago.
uh, do you feel any of the sort of reverberations of the spiritual connection that that person might have felt when you're standing there?
Well, it is. I feel awe-inspired. That's how I feel. So yes, you're right. As archaeologists, when we write, we don't write what we
I
imagine,
know,
right? We
I
we
know.
write what we see. We're very objective, but that doesn't mean that we're not having uh, a strong spiritual connection while we're there. We just don't write about it, right? We just write the objective parts. So when I wrote an article about this find, I just wrote the dimensions, the findings, the method that I use, and the interpretation. But as I was there, I was completely awe-inspired by the place, and the closest thing that I can describe is being in flow state. Being in flow state when you're, in climbing, you're in flow state when you're just moving so naturally through the rock. But in archaeology, I feel I'm in flow state when I'm just watching everything around me and putting it together with what we know about this place and what we know about ancient traditions and how these traditions and this symbolism is represented in everything that is around me. So that's what I was feeling. I think I was in flow state.
Yeah, and from that flow state, I've been so interested in these experiences of flow for my own personal reasons, and just by bumping into different cultures. But what you're describing is a flow state based off of piecing together the experience of somebody from 5 to 700 years ago. I mean, what it sounds like what you have to do is let go of your own assumptions, let go of your own ego, and put yourself truly in the present moment where you are so you can feel what that person felt or see what that person was saying without your own layers of interpretation, masking what you might be right in front of you, like a hidden cave on the other side. Is that am I getting this correctly?
Yeah, yes, but although we do have a kind of like the work that previous archaeologists have done to help us get a little bit of more understanding. So that is in the back of my mind. You know, you do the
Mm.
research, you understand what we know and the history about the Zoque, and what archaeologists, including Dr. Josué Lozada, was part of this work that I did in Cañón de la Venta. And so what their work is in the back of my mind, and so it's being present and piecing together what have been done before, what has been discovered before and understood before, to what I'm seeing in that moment. And then of course, you know, you write a academic article about that, but in the moment it is being present and piecing together all of the information. Yeah.
Speaking of flow states and um, altered states in general, uh, what you've been able to do by going to these ancient ritualistic sites, caves, cliffs, caves, mountaintops, has been to step into a part of our human experience that is highly based in ritual, highly based in spirituality. It's the underworld, or it's the I mean, there's a picture of I think her in a cave with a series of skulls. It's a burial. It's a it's these are ceremonial locations, right? And I guess the question I have is, do you find other artifacts, evidence of plant medicines or, cave art or other things that are associated with these locations that are part of the rituals that you see within this landscape? Is there, you know, little fragments of San Pedro or something like this? I don't know. Like what are you seeing?
Well, in this is a great cave. This is Cave Puyil. Is in Tabasco, and these skulls turn out to be older than the Maya. These turned out to be prehistoric. So there's a chamber where it's a secondary burial. So it's like people took the bones from somewhere else and placed them there. But then we found another burial, and this burial was, like I said, we had to kind of like crawl, get on our bellies, and then come up. And everything, all the ritual, it was all the ritual that was done. It was there. There was a little bottle where they use maybe psychedelic plans for the ritual. There was this pottery where they might have used it also for ritual. So all the little elements, and they were around a stalagmite. Again, it wasn't random. So everything was exactly the way they left them. And I did this exploration because it was cave explorers who found them, and I did this together with Dr. Luis Alberto Martos. So he's the one who wrote about these finds.
Wow. Did they do any
Yeah.
chemical analysis inside the bottle?
I'm not sure about the chemical analysis. I talked to him a couple of months ago about it, and he didn't mention that. I don't know about that. They did dating on the skulls, and and yeah, they recovered and they placed the artifacts on a local museum there in Tabasco.
Oh, well, I want to follow up on that one because we just started this Center for Psychedelic Research at UCSD, and they asked me to
Okay.
to develop the anthropological part of that. You know, even though it's situated in the School of Medicine, it's all these things come from anthropological origins, right? And I had this, my only anecdote to that is I had an experience on an expedition many years ago in Peru, where we found out that my porter was, when we found some bones at the top of this mountain, like human remains, he started doing all these these ceremonies, realized that he was a shaman, a Peruvian shaman,
Mm,
and he took me to this cave where you saw this huge sort of Inca stairway sort of going down. But at the top of the
mhm,
cave, there was almost like a big stone obelisk almost. And then when you stood exactly the way you described, looking at the alignment to this thing and the entrance to this cave, right behind us, exactly behind us, was this perfectly carved doorway, a double jammed doorway into the mountain, but going nowhere, just straight, like just a artifice of a doorway. And there, he pulled out the San Pedro and things like this, and things
mm.
happened, and you feel this connection to this place. And as he played this song over and over again, this like consistent song that has I hear it in modern day music. It's El Condor Pasa.
Mm,
He,
mhm.
that song. He said that this song goes 7 civilizations back in time, and but it was all in relationship to this place in this cave and this doorway and this offering, and the ritualism of it all. And when you describe the things that you're finding and you describe those experiences, I can't help but feel like, in my imagination, a little bit like the person you described when you're sitting in that cave and seeing the modern rock art of the climb you're about to do. um Not a lot has changed, right? We're still like, these are traditions and connections to our ancient spirituality that still have echoes. They're you just have to be willing to look. um Powerful, powerful ritual, and it goes all the way back even further. And I'll stop talking pretty soon here, but I have a friend, Lee Berger, who made this discovery many years ago in South Africa, of the Rising Star Cave system and the offerings of the Homo naledi, like a non-Homo sapien, uh, from 300 something thousand years ago. And again, this other non-human species was, but one of our very close relatives was having these rituals in the heart of a cave, in the heart of a cave. So, do you have any final thought? I mean, I wanted to ask you. There's another question I'm going to ask before we go. I'm going to ask you about your book. But are there any final thoughts on caves? And like, are we going to return to caves? And does humanity end in a cave if it began in a cave? Like, what is it about caves? Is there a final thought?
Well, I guess it's a final thought is just a slowing down and when we're in natural places sometimes when I'm doing hiking, I hear people and they are still, talking about the everyday life in the city when you are in nature, So when you are in nature, I think it's about slowing down and looking at everything
Mm.
around you, and you go to caves and and just feel that connection. And I guess it's about that. I think the connection is inside of us, and it's just about, kind of like uh, silencing your mind and feeling that connection.
In that flow state.
Yeah, right on.
Awesome. Awesome.
Exactly.
Okay, final question I have for you is, I know that you're working on a book. I don't know if you're allowed to talk about it too much yet, but I know that it includes something about the 12 most fascinating artifacts in the Mexico National Museum. And the description that you said, that I read about it, was that this story includes heists and all sorts of things. Uh, if you're feeling comfortable, do you want to share with us what your most fascinating one is, your favorite artifact of Mexico's National
Oh, well,
Museum?
there are several. I don't have a favorite. So yes, I am uncovering stories at this point, rather than artifacts. I am uncovering stories uh, about the artifacts from the Museum of Anthropology and the people that brought us these artifacts, like how the people who discovered them, the people who stole them, the people who brought new understanding and the stories behind them. So because these artifacts have kind of like a different life, right? So they have a certain meaning for the ancient peoples, but then they had a different meaning throughout time when they were discovered or collected or stolen. So I'll show you one of the artifacts that I'm working on. So
Is that
this
a
is
fish?
from Tlatilco. This is a fish, the pottery of a fish.
Oh, that's cool. Look at that. It's an
And this
open
is
mouth fish.
it's beautiful. Yeah. And this is from a place that's very, very similar to Metzaboc from Tlatilco. And yes,
Like an
yes.
early Maya city.
It wasn't Maya because it's from this area, so it doesn't have a connection with the Maya, but it does have connections with the Olmecs. So there was some relationships taking place between the Olmec and this place. So I talk about this place and the artist who basically started doing the first understanding about the art from Tlatilco and figure out that both Tlatilco and the Olmec were prior to the Maya, because in that time it was
Right.
believed that the Maya was the early people. So that is one of the artifacts. But yeah,
Wait.
the chapter about the yes.
So that artifact was a key artifact in the placement of the Olmec in the timeline. Is that
Not necessarily, no, not this artifact. This is from Tlatilco, but Miguel Covarrubias, who was an artist, through his vision as an artist, he saw that the Olmec art seemed to be seemed to have kind of like this simplicity, this realism, where the Mayan art was more baroque and full of full of symbols and iconography. So he said, the Olmec has to be before. And then archaeology and scientific evidence proved that he was right. So this same artist was the one who did the earliest discoveries in Tlatilco, the watery place in Mexico City
Mm.
that was
Oh,
similar
yeah.
to
Right.
what we see in Metzaboc. So that is
I
the
see.
chapter that I'm thinking about right now. But you mentioned the heist, and well, Mexicans, we know about this, but many other people don't know that the largest heist of an anthropology museum took place in 1985 here in Mexico City, and they pulled off an amazing heist. 114 of the best archaeological artifacts were stolen
Oh, no.
on a Christmas Eve while the guards were distracted celebrating Christmas. Two people came into the museum late at night, walked throughout the museum, and stole between 114 and 120 archaeological pieces. It was an enormous loss for Mexico, of course, and everybody here knows the artifacts were later recovered. They were recovered. You can see them now, but this is the story of what happened in between. What happened in between when they were stolen and how they were recovered, and you can enjoy them now in the Mayan Hall, the Mexica Hall, and in the Oaxaca Hall.
Wow. Okay. Well, the heist. That's for the next one, right? But it was so cool to see that piece of art that you described from the Mexica in
The Tlatilca,
the
sorry,
Tilca. And
Tlatilca.
again, everything you say makes me have another question. The question I end with, and it goes back to the idea of ritual and caves and imagination. I've often thought that ecologies, you know, like where certain plants grow, before our modern era, they were very, very localized, right? Like if you spent your civilization grew in a certain type of jungle versus another one, another kind of ecology, you're going to have access to different plants, and you're going to have in caves, you're going to have different kinds of rituals, and you're going to have different kinds of flow states or psychedelic trips, to be just blunt. So, do you think that there's a relationship to the types of substances that people pulled from the environment to the way that their imagination then was represented in the art that we see today? Is there a certain ritual that leads to more Maya art, or a certain altered state of consciousness that leads to the art that you just showed me now? Is there any thought on that?
I would need to research more on that because uh, I don't have specific information, but I imagine that just the environment of the cave had a particular effect on people, just being completely in the dark and just spending some time to get there, spending a couple of hours to get there and being surrounded in this damp, cold environment must have had a completely different experience in the rituals that took place.
Yeah. I mean, it makes a lot of sense, right? Like today there's people who go into silent meditations, dark silent meditations, and I guess what you're saying is that from the caves we emerged, but maybe also not so far apart from that is the realization that from these caves our imagination, uh, it was in a flow. Our imagination takes us to incredible places, and that's where the world's born. Well, Arcelia, it's been 1 year. I think we can't wait another year. I hope to go back into the wilderness of Chiapas with you. This time it's gonna what you said, we're going to some cliffs. We're gonna go to the cliffs next. I would
Yeah,
really love that actually. And
I would
and
love that.
I'll work my way back up to that solid 5'10", 5'10" plus to make sure I can hang. But yeah, I'm blown away by you. My daughter's a big fan. She watched you climbing down in that
Oh,
cave and saw a bunch of different stuff. I was like, she thought you were a badass. I do too. And I can't wait to see this book when it comes out. I hope you send me a special copy, and I can read all about it. But thank you for entering into the womb of the earth with me in Mexico on that episode for Lost Cities. But I look forward to more.
oh, thank you. Thank you for inviting me to contribute and for this podcast, Wish you lots of success with this podcast and ah man, I can't wait to talk some more about I can't wait to see the episode and talk some
I know. We
more.
gotta fix that. You gotta come stay in the podcast room. We'll do this one in person.
Yeah.
This is just the beginning. We realize that in all the travels, I bump into the most incredible people like yourself who have dedicated your life to such an interesting passion. And the episodes are great, but they don't. Like there's so many more. There's so much more to talk
Yeah,
about afterwards. So
absolutely.
I think what we got to do is we got to pair the next episode of our podcast that I'll do with you with us hanging off a cliff in Chiapas, and we shouldn't wait too long. I mean, let's do this soon.
Yeah.
When's the next time we'll go offline. We'll talk about this. Plan our expedition. We'll plan it up now, and I'll tell my buddies here, Bear, Laura, and Johnny to start getting their climbing sessions in at the gym so we can deliver here. But I look forward to it.
Excellent.
And
Sounds
until
like a
then,
plan.
I'll keep myself thinking about that moment where you stood in front of a stalactite and an offering and realized on the other side of that was a portal into the unknown.
Yeah.
So thank
Yeah.
you, Arcelia, and see you on the mountain.
Thank you, Albert. See you at the mountain. Till the next one.
To the next
Bye.
one.